If you can't handle it, divorce me. Claire said it while my best friend drank 12-year bourbon from the crystal glass I bought on our 10th anniversary. Jason leaned against my kitchen island like he owned the mortgage, one sleeve rolled to the elbow, wedding ring-sized tan line still pale on his left hand from his own divorce 6 months earlier. He smirked into the whiskey before lifting his eyes toward me like he'd finally won something he'd chased for years. I stood there with my truck keys cutting into my palm so hard the metal teeth marked my skin. Funny thing about betrayal. People expect shouting, tables flipping, some dramatic movie scene where a man loses control. Real betrayal feels quieter, sharper, like hearing a doctor pause before reading test results. Claire crossed her arms over the silk sweater I paid for during our Napa trip last fall. The same trip where she cried in the hotel balcony hot tub and told me she felt lucky to have a husband who made life feel safe. Looking back, that word safe carried a different meaning for her. Safe meant predictable. Safe meant useful. Safe meant a man who worked 60-hour weeks while she rewrote the rules behind his back. Jason swirled the bourbon once. Ice cracked against the glass. "Ethan," he said, voice smooth as polished wood. "Nobody planned this." That line almost made me laugh. Affairs always come wrapped in the same cheap language. Nobody planned this. It just happened. Feelings changed. People grew apart. Clean little corporate phrases for dirty behavior. 3 months earlier, I noticed Jason's Amex ending in 4417 attached to our country club guest account twice during weekday afternoons while I sat in merger meetings downtown. Claire said she spent those afternoons at Pilates. Then came the bank alerts. Small charges. Downtown parking garages. Wine bars she claimed she hated. I traced timestamps one night at my office after everyone left. Same pattern every Thursday between 1:10 p.m. and 4:40 p.m. Same district. Same garage. Same digital trail. My stomach turned cold back then, but I kept digging instead of confronting. Men who build companies learn one rule early. Emotion clouds leverage. Facts create leverage. So I hired a forensic accountant through a private legal retainer under Hamilton and Burke. Quiet firm. Expensive firm. The kind of attorneys wealthy men hire before their wives realize the battlefield changed. Claire still thought our assets sat inside one shared world. Joint checking. Joint brokerage. Shared ownership. That illusion protected me better than any security system. Jason placed the bourbon down carefully, suddenly less relaxed under my silence. He expected rage. Claire expected pleading. She tilted her head slightly. "Say something." I looked at both of them for a long second. 22 years of friendship sat beside 12 years of marriage, and somehow the friendship hurt worse. Jason helped carry my father's casket. Jason toasted at my wedding. Jason held my newborn niece before my own brother did. Some men steal money. Some steal opportunities. Jason stole access. Access to my home. Access to my routines. Access to my blind spots. And Claire handed him the keys herself. I finally set my laptop bag down near the hallway table and loosened my tie slowly. Jason's confidence flickered for half a second when he noticed I looked calm. Truly calm. That's when predators grow nervous. "Okay," I said. "Just one word." Claire blinked. Jason straightened. Then my phone buzzed inside my pocket. One new email. Subject line: Asset protection structure finalized. Sent from my attorney 43 seconds earlier. Jason met me when we were both 23 and too broke to order appetizers without checking our bank accounts first. We shared a 2-bedroom apartment above a pawn shop in Tempe during graduate school, split grocery bills down to the dollar, and spent Friday nights pitching startup ideas over cheap beer and spreadsheets. Back then, Jason carried ambition like a performance. Loud, flashy, constant. I carried mine quieter. I built systems. He built impressions. Together, it worked. At least that is what I believed for 20 years. He stood beside me during every major chapter of my life. When my father collapsed from a stroke during a company dinner in Phoenix, Jason drove 300 miles overnight just to sit beside me in the hospital cafeteria while doctors explained clot damage and rehabilitation percentages. When Claire and I married in Scottsdale, Jason raised a champagne glass and told everyone I was the most loyal man he had ever known. Funny how men like that always praise loyalty right before testing how much they can exploit it. Looking back, the shift started long before the affair surfaced. Small changes. Jason texting Claire directly instead of using our group thread. Claire laughing harder at his stories than mine. Jason showing up to Sunday barbecues wearing watches he could barely afford while fishing for reactions from my investors. He chased status constantly. Claire admired status constantly. I spent too many years assuming admiration stayed harmless. Around 18 months earlier, Jason asked me for a bridge loan after his consulting firm bled nearly $400,000 during a failed acquisition deal in Denver. He arrived at my office sweating through a navy dress shirt, hands trembling while he explained cash flow issues and overdue vendor obligations. I wired the money within 48 hours through a private capital account tied to Walker Strategic Holdings. No contract, no collateral, just trust. That word tastes poisonous now. Claire defended him constantly after that. Jason just needs support. Jason has always supported us. Jason feels insecure around successful people. Every sentence positioned him closer to our marriage while making me sound colder for asking questions. 3 months ago, my forensic accountant, Leonard Pike, built a transaction map from Claire's debit card usage after I flagged irregular spending patterns. Leonard worked homicide-level financial tracing before switching into private litigation consulting. Quiet guy, ex-Federal Reserve investigator. He assembled timelines the way surgeons separate arteries. He highlighted recurring overlap between Claire's purchases and Jason's location pings pulled from social media metadata. Same restaurants. Same boutique hotel valet service. Same gym access logs. Thursdays became their routine because my executive board meetings locked me downtown until 7:30 every evening. They studied my schedule carefully. That part hit harder than the affair itself. Affairs run on emotion. Coordination requires strategy. Leonard slid one printed report across the conference table 4 days earlier and tapped a highlighted section with his pen. Your wife recently accessed shared retirement accounts 3 separate times, he said calmly. Then she searched liquidation penalties and marital division statutes. Claire already planned her exit. Jason already prepared his landing spot. They moved pieces before speaking the words aloud. That explained the sudden confidence in my kitchen. Claire thought she cornered a tired husband emotionally. Jason thought he replaced me strategically. Neither understood the structure sitting underneath my finances. 6 years earlier, after a hostile acquisition attempt from a private equity group in Chicago, I transferred major assets into layered protection vehicles under irrevocable trusts managed through Nevada and Wyoming entities. Separate holding companies controlled the commercial real estate. Separate trusts controlled voting shares. Claire saw wealth every day. She never saw the locks around it. Jason especially never saw them. Men like him stare at surface numbers and assume ownership follows proximity. My phone buzzed again while I stood in that kitchen. Second email from Hamilton and Burke. This one carried a scanned attachment. Emergency filing confirmation. Effective immediately, every joint line above $50,000 now required dual authorization. Claire's face still held that smug certainty until she saw me reading the screen. Then something tiny shifted in her eyes. Fear finally entered the room. Claire recovered faster than Jason did. That surprised me at first. Jason carried panic close to the surface. Claire buried hers under posture, tone, and controlled breathing. She folded her arms tighter after seeing the legal notification on my screen and shifted into the same polished cadence she used during charity board meetings and realtor lunches. You are seriously overreacting right now, she said, eyes fixed on me carefully, measuring damage. Jason grabbed his glass again, though. His fingers tightened around it harder than before. He wanted control back inside the room. Men like Jason survive through momentum. Once momentum breaks, insecurity leaks through every sentence. Ethan, he said, leaning forward slightly, nobody touched your money. There it was. Your money. Funny choice of words from a man sleeping with another man's wife. He already separated me emotionally from the marriage in his head. Claire shot him a quick glance after he said it. Tiny mistake. Tiny crack. Affairs thrive on fantasy until logistics arrive carrying paperwork. I loosened my cufflinks slowly and walked toward the kitchen counter where Claire left her phone charging beside a half-finished glass of Chardonnay. She moved immediately. Too quickly. Instinct exposed more truth than any confession ever could. Do not touch my phone, she snapped. That sentence told me more than passwords ever would. Guilty people guard devices like oxygen tanks. I held up one hand calmly. Relax, I said. Your attorney will hand over everything during discovery anyway. Jason's jaw tightened. Claire stayed silent this time. Discovery. Another word they failed to plan around emotionally. Most people imagine divorce as arguments and signatures. Real divorce begins with extraction. Bank records, login histories, transfer patterns, metadata, hidden subscriptions, burner payment apps. Every digital footprint turns into evidence once attorneys enter the room. Leonard Pike warned me about this months ago during our second meeting. Infidelity changes behavior patterns, he told me while sorting through Claire's account activity on a 40-inch monitor. People grow sloppy once they believe they deserve the affair. He proved it through timelines. Claire stopped spacing transactions carefully around week 6. Jason charged luxury dinners through his business expense account twice during weekends when Claire claimed girls' trips in Sedona. They shared one Uber account by accident during a Thursday afternoon downtown. One mistake linked everything together. Men underestimate data because emotions feel larger in the moment. Data wins anyway. Claire crossed her arms again and shifted strategies completely. So what happens now? She asked. Cleaner tone. Colder tone. Transactional already. That part hit deeper than the affair itself. 12 years together reduced into procedural language within minutes. Jason stared at her after hearing that question. He expected romance tonight. He got legal exposure instead. I opened my laptop on the kitchen counter and entered a security token sequence tied to Walker Strategic Holdings. Claire recognized the company name immediately. She always thought the entity existed for tax optimization around commercial real estate. Partial truth. The entity also separated operational liability from personal ownership structures. She watched my screen carefully while I opened internal account summaries. Several balances displayed 7 figures. Jason leaned slightly closer, trying to read numbers upside down. Predators always track assets before consequences. You plan this? Claire asked quietly. Her voice finally carried uncertainty. I looked at her for a long second before answering. I prepared, I said. Big difference. Jason stood up then. Fast. Defensive energy rolled off him suddenly. Come on, man, he muttered, rubbing one hand across his jaw. You are acting like we committed some crime. Another interesting word choice. Crime. People reveal their fear accidentally once pressure enters the room. I closed the laptop gently and slipped my phone back into my pocket. Funny you mentioned that, I said, because Leonard found something this morning involving your consulting invoices and one of my subsidiaries. Jason froze instantly. Claire turned toward him so sharply the stem of her wine glass tipped sideways across the marble counter. Jason opened his mouth twice before words finally came out. That has nothing to do with Claire, he said quickly, eyes locked on me now instead of her. There it was again. Separation. Distance. Self-preservation kicking in under pressure. Affairs always look romantic until financial exposure enters the room. Then survival instincts start rewriting loyalties in real time. Claire turned toward him slowly, wine spreading across the marble counter near her phone while she searched his face for answers he clearly never planned to give her. What invoices? She asked quietly. Jason exhaled once through his nose and grabbed the edge of the island harder than before. I watched both of them carefully. Years inside corporate negotiations taught me one thing. Silence creates confession faster than accusations. So I stayed quiet and let paranoia do the work for me. Jason finally looked back at Claire. It is accounting stuff, he muttered. Weak answer. Weak men always shrink their language once pressure rises. Claire stared at him for 3 long seconds before shifting toward me again. Ethan, she said carefully, what exactly are you accusing him of? Accusing. Another legal word. She already sensed the battlefield changing shape. I pulled my phone out again and opened the encrypted file Leonard sent earlier that morning. 4 highlighted transfers sat across the screen totaling just under $280,000 routed through consulting reimbursements tied to one of my dormant logistics subsidiaries in Nevada. Jason submitted the invoices through a regional operations manager he golfed with twice a month. Sloppy routing. Sloppier documentation. Leonard flagged the pattern within 48 hours because the billing descriptions repeated phrasing generated from the same template engine. Identical syntax. Identical punctuation. Fraud leaves fingerprints once greed speeds up the process. You build my company for advisory services that never existed, I said calmly. Jason shook his head instantly. Too fast. That is complete garbage. Then explain the Aspen Ridge invoices, I replied. His jaw flexed hard enough for me to see the muscle twitch near his ear. Claire looked between us now, like somebody trapped inside an elevator cable, snapping one strand at a time. I kept my tone level. Controlled men scare people more than emotional ones. Leonard traced Shell routing through Blackwater Consulting. I continued. Then he matched the deposit timing against your personal account activity. Claire's face lost color slowly after hearing the account name. She recognized Blackwater. Jason mentioned it several times over the past year while pretending he finally rebuilt his consulting business after the Denver collapse. Funny thing about lies. Most people fail through repetition, not complexity. Jason sold the same story too many times. Claire stepped away from him slightly. Barely 6 inches. Still enough to matter. Jason noticed too. Fear entered his eyes for real then. That fear had nothing to do with me anymore. He started calculating exposure. Tax fraud. Civil liability. Professional reputation. Licensing reviews. Men like Jason survive through image management. One forensic audit destroys 20 years of curated confidence overnight. You set me up, he snapped suddenly, pointing at me now. You knew I was struggling. I almost smiled at that. Betrayers always rebrand consequences into victimhood once accountability arrives. I gave you trust, I said. You converted it into invoices and hotel reservations. Claire closed her eyes briefly after hearing that sentence. Hotel reservations. Another detail she never expected me to confirm out loud. Her breathing changed then. Faster. Smaller. She finally understood the scope. I saw more than texts. More than suspicions. Leonard extracted transaction histories, travel overlap reports, deleted calendar sync records, and metadata from cloud backups tied to shared devices inside our home network. Every hidden meeting left a digital shadow somewhere. Affairs survive through secrecy. Technology kills secrecy eventually. Jason grabbed his jacket off the counter abruptly. I am leaving, he muttered. Smart decision. Too late. My phone vibrated again before he reached the doorway. Third email from Hamilton and Burke. Subject line, preliminary injunction approved. I opened it immediately, while Jason stood frozen near the entryway. Claire watched my expression carefully now. Waiting. Reading. Hunting for danger. Then I looked up at Jason and said the sentence that finally drained the confidence from his face completely. The court just froze your consulting accounts pending investigation. Jason stared at me like a man watching the floor collapse beneath his own feet 1 inch at a time. His confidence vanished fast after hearing the court order. He pulled his phone from his pocket immediately, thumb moving across the screen with sharp, frantic motions. Then his expression tightened even further. He already saw the freeze notification. Consulting accounts suspended. Outgoing transfers blocked. Merchant processing restricted pending review. Fear changes posture before words. 5 minutes earlier, he leaned across my kitchen island like a man stealing another man's life. Now his shoulders curled inward while his brain raced through unpaid leases, payroll obligations, credit exposure, and whatever promises he fed Claire over the last few months. Claire looked at him differently too. That shift fascinated me more than the affair itself. Women like Claire admire certainty. Jason suddenly looked expensive instead of powerful. He stepped toward me once, jaw tense. You went nuclear over a relationship, he snapped. Wrong again. Men like Jason always reduce consequences down to emotion because they fail to understand systems. This stopped being about betrayal weeks ago. Betrayal triggered the audit. The audit exposed everything else. You submitted fraudulent invoices through a subsidiary tied to interstate procurement contracts, I said calmly. That creates legal problems bigger than marriage. Claire pressed one hand against the counter slowly like she needed balance. Her breathing shortened again. She spent months imagining some dramatic emotional divorce where she walked away morally justified, while Jason rescued her into a better life. Reality entered wearing forensic spreadsheets and injunction filings instead. That tends to kill fantasy quickly. Jason rubbed one hand over his mouth and paced 2 steps toward the dining room before stopping again. He kept checking his phone between sentences now. Men under pressure hunt for exits instinctively. I can explain the invoices, he muttered. It was temporary cash flow restructuring. Corporate language again. Amazing how quickly thieves become consultants once paperwork surfaces. I opened another document Leonard compiled earlier that afternoon. Timeline summaries. transaction chains, device overlap records, hotel billing metadata. The report stretched nearly 70 pages already, and Leonard still called it preliminary. Claire's eyes tracked the pages as I scrolled. Every highlighted line stripped another layer off the illusion she built around herself. "You tracked us?" she whispered. There it was. Her first real emotional reaction all night. Not guilt. Fear. Fear that secrecy failed. I looked directly at her. "I followed financial exposure," I answered. "Your affair happened inside the exposure." She swallowed hard after that. Claire always respected intelligence more than emotion. Somewhere inside her mind, she finally realized I stopped reacting like a husband several weeks earlier. I started operating like a strategist instead. That terrified her more than yelling ever could. Jason shoved his phone back into his pocket harder this time. "This is insane," he muttered. "You are trying to destroy me." I almost laughed at that sentence. Destroy him? No. Jason destroyed himself the second greed entered the affair. Affairs survive through emotional chaos. Fraud creates timestamps. Timestamps create evidence. Evidence creates leverage. Men who build companies learn leverage matters more than anger every single time. Claire finally stepped away from Jason completely then. Small movement, huge meaning. Jason noticed instantly. His eyes flashed toward her with sudden suspicion. Affairs collapse fast once survival instincts divide the participants. He looked at her like he suddenly wondered how much she already knew about the invoices. Claire looked back at him like she suddenly questioned whether the entire relationship rested on lies bigger than cheating. Good. Let paranoia eat them both. My phone vibrated again across the marble counter. Fourth notification tonight. Leonard this time. One sentence only. You need to review the attached airport surveillance timestamps immediately. I opened the file while Jason and Claire stood frozen across from me. Then I saw the date on the footage. 3 days before my mother's funeral. 3 days before my mother's funeral, Claire told me she needed space to process emotionally and booked a wellness retreat outside Sedona. I remember standing in my office holding that text message while hospice paperwork covered my desk and my mother struggled to form complete sentences inside a hospital bed 40 miles away. Back then, grief blurred instinct. I accepted the explanation because exhausted people accept whatever hurts less in the moment. Leonard's file erased that version of reality in under 10 seconds. The airport surveillance still frames showed Claire and Jason walking through Sky Harbor together at 6:14 a.m. Claire wore oversized sunglasses and one of my old college sweatshirts. Jason carried the leather weekender bag I gave him for his 40th birthday. Timestamps tracked them through Terminal 4, Security Checkpoint B, then boarding gate C-19 bound for Cabo San Lucas. Cabo. While I sat beside my dying mother reviewing morphine schedules and funeral costs, my wife and best friend flew to Mexico together using reward points tied to a corporate account Jason billed back through fraudulent reimbursements. Some betrayals hit the heart. Others infect memory itself. Suddenly, every hospital hallway conversation replayed differently inside my head. Every delayed text. Every fake concern. Every moment Claire squeezed my hand beside my mother's bed while carrying another life behind my back. Jason saw the rage hit my eyes before Claire did. He stepped forward immediately. "Ethan," he started, voice sharper now. "Listen to me carefully." Interesting phrase. Men only ask for careful listening when panic enters the room. I lifted the phone screen toward Claire silently. Her face drained so fast, she almost looked sick. She stared at the timestamp first, then the gate number, then Jason's hand resting lightly against her back in one of the still images. Tiny contact. Intimate enough to destroy 12 years of lies instantly. "You told me you were with your sister," I said quietly. Claire opened her mouth once, closed it again. No polished language left now. No moral superiority. Just exposure. Jason shifted tactics instantly because survival mattered more than loyalty at this point. "It was after the diagnosis," he said quickly. Claire was falling apart emotionally. There it was. Rationalization dressed as compassion. Affairs always rewrite themselves into rescue missions. Leonard warned me about that too. Affair partners build mythology fast, he explained during our third strategy session. One becomes the victim. The other becomes the savior. Facts usually tell a different story. Facts told me Claire charged couples massages to a corporate reimbursement card while my mother signed end-of-life directives 2 states away. Facts told me Jason upgraded their suite using loyalty points accumulated from fake consulting travel. Facts told me Claire sent me crying voice notes from the resort balcony 30 minutes after charging room service champagne under an alias attached to Jason's billing account. I stared at Jason for a long second. 20 years of friendship reduced into accounting evidence and airport footage. You sat in the front row at her funeral, I said. His eyes dropped immediately. Guilt finally landed somewhere inside him. Claire reached toward me then. Reflex maybe. Fear maybe. Ethan, please, she whispered. First time all night, she used my name softly instead of defensively. Too late. My phone buzzed again against the counter. Another message from Leonard. This time attached to a compressed archive file nearly 2 gigabytes large. I opened the preview summary and felt something cold move through my chest. Cloud backup extraction complete. Shared photo library recovered, including deleted media. Claire grabbed the edge of the counter after hearing the words deleted media. Jason looked ready to bolt through the front door. Funny how quickly confidence collapses once hidden things stop staying hidden. 6 hours earlier, they walked into my house, convinced they controlled the narrative. Now they stood trapped inside timelines, cloud archives, banking trails, and forensic recovery reports built by people who treated digital lies like puzzles waiting to be solved. Leonard once told me most affairs fail because people mistake deletion for disappearance. Phones erase thumbnails. Servers keep backups. Shared applications sync silently in the background for years. Human beings forget technology remembers everything. I opened the archive preview slowly while Claire stared at me with the kind of fear usually reserved for surgeons holding biopsy results. The recovered folder structure sorted media by geolocation metadata first. Cabo, Sedona, downtown Phoenix, Napa, Austin. Some folders stretched back nearly 11 months. 11 months. Jason rubbed both hands over his face and paced toward the dining room again. You hired somebody to spy on us for months, he snapped. Wrong question. Guilty people always attack process once evidence appears. I hired someone to protect my exposure, I answered calmly. You attached yourselves to the exposure. Claire stepped toward me then, voice cracking slightly for the first time all night. Ethan, stop opening those files. Another mistake. Innocent people ask what the files contain. Guilty people already know. I looked at her for several seconds before tapping the first recovered directory. Hundreds of thumbnails populated the screen instantly. Airport lounges, resort balconies, restaurant mirrors, hotel elevators, smiling selfies, intimate body language, private jokes captured in frozen frames while my marriage quietly rotted underneath me. Jason closed his eyes briefly after the first image loaded. Cabo rooftop pool. Claire wearing the white sundress I bought her during our anniversary trip 2 years earlier. Jason's arm wrapped around her waist like he belonged there. Timestamp, 43 hours before my mother died. Some pain arrives loud. This kind settles deeper. Colder. Like swallowing ice water during a heart attack. Claire started crying softly then. Real tears this time. That surprised me more than the affair itself. I expected manipulation, defensiveness, anger. Instead, I watched panic finally collide with consequences inside her head. We were going to tell you, she whispered. Another classic line. People always claim honesty right after exposure removes every remaining exit. Jason looked at her sharply after she said that. Tiny moment. Huge shift. He suddenly realized Claire might start protecting herself first. Affairs survive on shared secrecy. Pressure breaks alliances fast. I zoomed further into the archive metadata while Leonard's notes scrolled alongside the recovery logs. Device. Synchronization records tied Claire's phone to a hidden cloud account Jason created under a consulting domain he controlled. Smart setup initially. Except Jason reused password fragments across multiple vendor accounts connected to his invoicing fraud. Leonard cracked the chain through credential overlap during financial tracing. Sloppy habits destroy careful lies eventually. You linked personal storage through business credentials, I said while reading the report. That single mistake connected everything. Jason stared at the floor after hearing that. Defeat finally settled across his face fully. Claire kept crying quietly beside the counter while trying to wipe mascara smudges with trembling fingers. Neither of them looked glamorous anymore. Just exhausted people standing inside the wreckage they built together. I closed the laptop halfway and exhaled slowly. 20 years of friendship. 12 years of marriage. Reduced into metadata and litigation strategy. Then my phone rang across the counter. Hamilton and Burke. Direct partner line. I answered immediately. Ethan, Richard Hamilton said without greeting, voice tight and serious. You need to hear this before Claire does. Her attorney filed divorce paperwork 3 weeks ago. Claire's head snapped toward me after hearing Richard Hamilton's words through the speaker. Her face changed instantly. Fear turned into calculation. That transition told me everything. She already knew exactly which attorney filed the paperwork because she hired them herself. Jason looked between us like a man realizing he entered a game halfway through without understanding the rules. 3 weeks ago, I repeated calmly into the phone. Richard answered immediately. Filed under sealed preparation status. Her attorney requested delayed service while negotiating asset positioning. Asset positioning. Such clean language for betrayal planned like a business merger. Claire wiped tears from her face quickly after hearing that phrase. Crying stopped the second strategy entered the conversation. Ethan, she said carefully, voice steadier now. I was protecting myself. There it was. Full honesty finally arriving through self-interest. Instead of guilt, I thanked Richard quietly and ended the call while staring at her across the kitchen island. 12 years together, and somehow that sentence hurt worse than the affair. Protection. Like I was some threat circling her life instead of the man who built most of it beside her. Jason stepped backward slowly toward the doorway again. Smart instinct. He sensed the center of gravity shifting away from romance and directly into legal warfare. Claire folded her arms tightly and lifted her chin slightly. Defensive posture. Familiar posture. I watched her use it during neighborhood disputes, contractor negotiations, even HOA hearings years earlier. Claire always believed confidence could overpower uncomfortable facts. That strategy worked until evidence arrived with timestamps attached. How much did you know? I asked her quietly. She hesitated half a second too long. About what? Wrong answer again. Guilty people always answer questions with questions once panic and strategy collide together. I reopened the file Richard forwarded moments earlier. Draft divorce petitions. Proposed asset claims. Preliminary lifestyle maintenance requests. Temporary occupancy demands for the Scottsdale property. Claire requested exclusive residential possession of the house while seeking valuation access to Walker Strategic Holdings. She thought she understood my structure. She understood the visible layer only. You already planned where you wanted me removed from, I said while scrolling through the filing notes. Jason looked genuinely uncomfortable now, maybe even blindsided. Interesting. Claire never told him everything either. Affairs survive on selective truths. Betrayers lie to each other almost as much as they lie to spouses. It was precautionary, Claire replied carefully. Women need protection in divorce situations. Another rehearsed sentence. Probably borrowed from attorneys or friends feeding her strategy scripts over wine lunches and private text threads. I studied the filing deeper while Leonard's notes remained open beside it. Then one line caught my attention immediately. Requested emergency forensic review of marital business transfers completed within the last 60 days. I almost smiled after reading that. Claire filed those requests because she sensed assets moving already. Smart instinct. Too slow. 6 years too slow. Every major holding already sat inside layered trust structures controlled through independent fiduciary management outside marital classification exposure. Leonard and Hamilton built those walls long before tonight ever happened. Claire spent months preparing for war against a version of me that stopped existing years ago. You think you buried money, she said suddenly, eyes narrowing slightly after seeing my expression. That alone will destroy you in court. Jason looked at her sharply after hearing that sentence. Another crack. Another moment where fear pushed her to reveal more than she intended. I closed the laptop carefully and leaned both hands against the marble counter. Claire, I said calmly, courts punish concealment. They reward legal separation structures created before marital conflict exists. Silence filled the room instantly after that. Real silence this time. The dangerous kind where people realize they misunderstood the battlefield completely. Claire's confidence faded again little by little while her mind recalculated every assumption she made about our finances. Jason stared at me with something close to horror now. He finally understood the scale of the mistake. Then Claire's phone buzzed sharply against the counter beside the spilled wine. She grabbed it immediately. Her face lost all remaining color after reading the screen. Jason's consulting firm just terminated him as managing partner. Jason stared at the termination notice on Claire's phone like a man watching his own obituary print in real time. His firm removed him through emergency vote authority effective immediately. Access revoked. Account suspended. Pending internal investigation. I saw the exact second panic replaced ego completely. He reached for the phone once, then stopped himself halfway like touching the screen might somehow make the words permanent. Claire looked at him differently now too. Months earlier she saw excitement in him. Escape. Risk. Energy. Tonight she saw debt exposure, legal instability, and a man unraveling under pressure. Affairs survive through fantasy. Reality bills by the hour. Jason finally broke first. You fed them this. He snapped at me, voice rough and uneven. You destroyed everything. Wrong again. I watched him carefully before answering because men like Jason spend their entire lives mistaking consequences for persecution. You destroyed it yourself, I said calmly. I just stopped shielding you from the impact. Silence settled across the kitchen after that. Real silence. Exhausted silence. The kind that arrives after lies burn through every remaining ounce of oxygen inside a room. Claire lowered herself slowly into one of the bar stools and stared down at the marble counter where spilled wine still stained the surface dark red. Earlier tonight, she stood there challenging me like she already won. Now she looked hollow. Smaller somehow. Funny how quickly certainty collapses once hidden structures reveal themselves. My phone buzzed again with another update from Leonard. Preliminary court acceptance confirmed. Asset protection secured. Additional review scheduled regarding fraudulent reimbursements tied to Blackwater Consulting. I locked the screen without responding. The war already ended. They just realized it later than I did. Jason grabbed his jacket finally and moved toward the front door without another word. Claire looked up at him once. Just once. He avoided eye contact completely. That moment mattered more than the affair ever did. Betrayal creates strange alliances built on adrenaline and secrecy. Pressure tears those alliances apart fast. Jason opened the front door halfway before stopping. You really planned all this? He asked quietly, still facing away from me. I leaned against the counter and studied the back of the man I once called my brother. No, I answered. I prepared for instability years ago. You two simply walked into the structure. He nodded once after hearing that. Tiny motion. Defeated motion. Then he walked out carrying nothing except panic and whatever remained of his collapsing reputation. Claire stayed seated long after the door closed behind him. Her breathing slowed gradually while reality settled heavier across her face minute by minute. What happens now? She asked finally. Earlier tonight, that question carried strategy underneath it. Now it sounded tired. Human. I looked around the kitchen for a second. Same marble counters. Same pennant lights. Same home I spent 12 years paying for, protecting, upgrading, and believing in. Funny how betrayal changes geography. Places stop feeling familiar once trust dies inside them. Now, I said quietly, now the truth finishes what secrecy started. Claire wiped her face slowly and looked toward the dark reflection in the kitchen window. I never thought you would react like this. That sentence almost made me smile. People mistake calm men for weak men all the time. They confuse restraint with helplessness because loud people dominate attention while disciplined people build leverage quietly in the background. My father taught me something years ago while repairing fence lines on his ranch outside Prescott. Storms reveal structure, he used to say. Weak foundations crack first. Tonight proved him right. Affairs reveal character faster than love ever will. Money reveals fear faster than betrayal ever will. And silence? Silence reveals power better than screaming ever can. Claire opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else, but her phone vibrated again before the words came out. Another notification. This one from her attorney. Subject line, urgent. We have a serious problem regarding the trust documents.